Day of the Blizzard, Chapter 5. The banging went on and on. The noise was hammering in Katie's head. I wish it would stop, she thought. She was on her knees, leaning against the door. Then the door wasn't there. Only an open space in the darkness. Her hands were still stretched out before her. Katie tumbled headlong into the shop. She lay on the dusty floor among the cardboard boxes and odd bits of bric-a-brac. A man stood over her. He looked very tall. "What's all this banging?" The voice seemed to come in uneven waves from far away. "What were you trying to do? Break down my door? Couldn't you see we're closed?" Katie tried to scramble up, but somehow she couldn't quite make it. The pawn shop seemed to spin around her. Shelves full of ornaments, glass cases crammed with watches and bracelets, racks full of jackets and coats, hanging lamps and chandeliers filled with the ceiling above her. What banging? Had she been banging? The noise had stopped, and that was good, but her thoughts were spinning. Odd bits of ideas she couldn't hold on to, a fuzzy haze she couldn't quite clear away. The owner of the shop towered over her. His face floated like a pale disk in the darkness far above her. Mamma's brooch. Envelope. Money. The bits of thoughts began to come together in her mind. She was surprised to find that her right hand was still clasped around the envelope, so tightly that she couldn't release her grip. It was even more soiled and tattered now, but it was still sealed. She held it out to the man. "Here. The money. The ticket. For Mamma's brooch," she gasped. He took it from her and opened it. She watched him count the money and study the green ticket. Then he looked at her and shook his head in disbelief. "Hey, Martha," he called. "Come here and see what the storm blew in. Worst storm in years, and we've got a customer. A paying customer." A woman came in from the room behind the shop, wiping her hands on her apron. She was short and round and gray-haired. "What's going on?" she asked, peering at Katie through steel-rimmed glasses. "Why, it's a little girl!" she cried. She dropped on her knees next to Katie. "Harry Lemon," she scolded, "this child is half frozen. Can't you see she needs help?" Katie felt herself being lifted up. Then the fog settled down on her again, and for a while she didn't feel anything at all. She had a vague feeling of being undressed. Someone was rubbing her hands and feet. It hurt, and she heard herself moaning. There were soothing words, a murmuring of voices. Then she was sitting at a kitchen table, wrapped in a patchwork quilt. Her shoes and stockings were drying in front of an iron stove. There was a delicious spicy smell of cabbage soup. It came from a steaming bowl of broth before her. "Eat," the pawnbroker's wife urged. "Get something hot inside of you." Poor little thing! Those fingers and toes of yours were near to frozen. Katie wriggled her bare toes. They still tingled some, but at least she could feel her feet again. She wrapped her hands around the warm soup bowl. How hungry she was! She drank the soup greedily, as if she hadn't eaten for days. The pawnbroker came into the kitchen, carrying Mamma's garnet brooch. He put it in Katie's outstretched hand. The graceful, little red bow glistened in the lamplight. It felt so light, and it looked so small, but Katie knew that to Mamma it meant a great deal. She remembered Mamma's wedding picture and the happy look on Mamma's face. Maybe Mamma would smile like that again when Katie brought home the brooch. Her hands trembling, Katie pinned the brooch to her old brown dress. She checked to see that it was securely fastened. She mustn't lose it on her way home. Going home! She'd almost forgotten that she still had to go home. Back out into the storm. It was still snowing. Even in the Lemon's back kitchen, she could hear the wind rattling the shutters outside. How long had she been here? A tall grandfather clock was ticking away in the corner. 2 o'clock. And she had left home before 7. What was happening at home all this time? What if Mamma had wakened? She'd be worried. Or was she too sick to care? And the twins? They must be hungry and scared. I must hurry home, Katie thought. Her stockings and dress were dry, but her shoes were still damp. Katy tugged at the hard, stiff leather. She could hardly force her feet into those misshapen shoes. "Wait," Mrs. Lemon said. She hurried into the shop. She rummaged inside a big box behind the counter. "Here," she said, handing Katy a pair of dusty old rubber boots. "See if they fit. All the things in this box are unclaimed. If they fit, you can have them." The boots were big, but Mrs. Lemon found some heavy woolen stockings in her catch-all box, and a knitted scarf, and red and white striped mittens. She tied Katy's own shoes and gloves into a neat parcel. But when Katy began to put on her coat, Mrs. Lemon stopped her. "Not now," she said. "I can't let you go back out into that storm. My Lord, I haven't seen a worse one since the winter of '72. Better wait here until it lets up. Grown men are having trouble today. You'll freeze before you get home." "I'll make it," Katy insisted. "I have to go home. Mamma's sick and the twins are alone. I've been gone too long already." Mrs. Lemon shook her head. "No, it's too far," she said firmly. "Nothing is moving out there. See for yourself." She patted Katy on the shoulder. "Cheer up," she said. "I put the kettle on for a nice cup of tea in front of the warm fire. There, it's whistling now." And leaving Katy in the shop, Mrs. Lemon hurried back into the kitchen. Katy stared out through the grimy glass panes of the door. Mrs. Lemon was right. Nothing was moving on Third Avenue. No vans, no wagons, no horse cars. No railroad trains were shaking the elevated tracks. Only a few people came trudging past, heads bent into the wind. She watched a tall, heavy man stopped by a sudden gust. It looked as if he were wrestling with an invisible opponent. Finally he went on. One part of Katy wanted to stay. She wanted to be safe and warm and protected in front of that cozy kitchen fire. But something else told her to go. "I must try," Katy thought. "I must know how Mamma is doing. I can't leave her alone any longer. She must have been gone so many hours. Anything could have happened at home." Katy touched the brooch, tracing the loops of the bow with her fingers. How pleased Mamma would be! Seeing Mamma's happy face would be worth everything. Quickly Katy put on her coat. She wrapped the scarf around her neck and Mamma's shawl over her head. From the kitchen she could hear the sound of clinking teacups and the rattle of silverware. The Lemons were talking to each other, but one of them might come into the shop at any moment and stop her from going. "I'm sorry, but I have to go," Katy whispered. Then she opened the door quietly and slipped outside.